All right, first order of business. Congratulations to West Point for winning the Army-Navy game 15-0 in a foggy contest held up at Michie Stadium. All we can hope is our young quarterback learns how to run the triple option in the offseason and will come back stronger next year. Next year's game's being played at the Meadowlands up outside of New York. So we'll see you again next year, West Point. All right, today is Electoral College Day. I dare say that none of us knew what Electoral College Day was in previous elections. So this is the era of Trump when we're made more civically aware. As I said in an early episode of the show, that's one of the good unintended consequences of the Trump administration. So currently, the stats, or the final stats, if you will, are Biden 306, Trump 232. So Electoral College gets together and ideally they would carry out the will of the people and render their votes in accordance with how the voters in their states voted. But there have been what are called faithless electors in the history of the United States. In fact, there have been a total of 165 faithless electors. There was an article in the Washington Post recently about the 1960 election, which is a great and fairly recent example because it's happened, Jeffersonian era and mid 19th century. There were some issues with the Electoral College. But in 1960, the Kennedy-Nixon contest, Kennedy won by a very slim margin. And so when you have a close one, obviously folks are going to try to exploit holes in the process, as we're seeing this time, but this was an even more intense effort. So the electors, not the lawmakers, the electors from Mississippi and Alabama refused to commit to voting in accordance with the will of the voters in their states. And they came up with a plan that had three options. First was convince Kennedy to stop giving money to communist states and to come up or reprogram that money in support of states' rights, which is code for initiatives to stop civil rights from moving forward. The second option was to have the candidates on the Democratic side flip roles, which is to say, make Lyndon B. Johnson the president and make Kennedy the vice president. They really didn't like Kennedy because one of the planks of his campaign was civil rights. And also he was Catholic, and they didn't like that a whole lot either. So that's the second option. Third option was they were trying to get their colleagues, the other electors from the other the other 9 southern states, total of 11, to gather together to tee up a list of suitable Southern men, including Harry Byrd and some other names that are lost to history. So this initiative got nowhere, and as we know, ultimately Kennedy became the president. So the other thing that happens in the process, again, there's a popular vote, Electoral College renders their votes today, and then on the 6th of January, Congress counts the votes. So this is a really iterative and convoluted process, this representative democracy that we have. So we can fully expect some protestations, some tweets, some stunts today, and then for sure, we're going to see some stunts in the halls of the Capitol on January 6th. So the vote happens, Electoral College, as we said, 306 to 232. Trump, as we could predict, claiming massive fraud, not acknowledging that Biden won. There's still some question about what he's going to do on Inauguration Day. Was just seen on Fox News on Saturday telling Brian Kilmeade, unmasked, both of them, and not socially distanced, that he won by a massive amount. Truly Trumpian rhetoric. The classic Trumpian denial. Just keep saying it, and therefore it'll be true. So the Trump defense team, the all-star team, Giuliani, Sidney Powell, later fired, Jenna Ellis, some others, supported by Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, who says he'll give the Trump case to the Supreme Court if it comes to that. And then other Texas legislators like Dan Crenshaw, who made this stupid video yesterday. Again, as I said in the last episode, or the episode before last, I really would like to like him because of his pedigree as a Navy SEAL, but he makes it impossible. In fact, he's made his Navy SEAL status into a cartoon. But I guess it works for some of the MAGA types. So they have tried lawsuits at the state level, which judges have ruled against them. And then the state of Pennsylvania tried to go in front of the Supreme Court. It didn't get anywhere because the Supreme Court said, we're not going to hear this because it's based on zero evidence and conspiracy theories. But that doesn't stop the Trump cult from moving forward or attempting to move forward, right? So the Attorney General of the state of Texas sues Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania. That suit is joined by 16 other states. That suit is in turn joined by 106 GOP congressmen and then 20 more in an amicus status, as we've talked about in a previous show. But still nowhere, right? There's no there. There's no facts. It's all the same thing that's been shot down at the state level. But that doesn't stop them from keeping going. So now the latest wrinkle. We introduce secession. Not succession, secession. Because some on some message boards, Trump-leaning message boards are saying, we want to succeed. Yeah, good luck. Everybody wants to succeed. But we're talking about secede. So there is a state lawmaker, state representative named Kyle Biederman, who tweeted recently, a couple days ago, this: the faith of the people of Texas stands pledged to the preservation of a Republican form of government, and subject to this limitation only, they have at all times the inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish their government in such manner as they may think expedient. The GOP chairman, Alan West, in response to the Supreme Court declaration, said this. He released a press release on December 11th, where he ended with, perhaps law-abiding states should bond together and form a union of states that will abide by the Constitution. Okay, so that's a tacit call to secede, whereas the other guy, Biederman, out and out said it. Let's secede. Okay, so let's talk about succession. Now I want to read you, because they've done this before, right? I mean, Texas has seceded from the Union before. So a declaration of causes on February 2nd, 1861 had some language in it that's reminiscent of the rhetoric that's being used now. So let me read you, indulge me, let me read you a portion of this. So they tee up the fact that on the first day of March in 1845, they agreed to be part of the Union, because remember, it was the Republic of Texas. And then they agreed to be a state in 1845. But there was an asterisk on that, right? They said, okay, we'll agree, but we always enjoy the right to withdraw from this agreement if you guys do things that we don't think are in our best interest, right? So what is the best interest of Texas in 1861? Well, let me read you this. So it says, she, meaning the state of Texas, was received into the Confederacy with her own constitution under the guarantee of the federal constitution and the compact of annexation, that she should enjoy these blessings. She was received as a commonwealth holding, maintaining, protecting the institution known as the servitude of the African to the white race within her limits. Okay, that's the reason. Slavery. Her institutions and geographical position established the strongest ties between her, again, the state of Texas, and other slaveholding states of the Confederacy. Those ties have been strengthened by association. But what has been the course of the government of the United States and of the people and authorities of non-slaveholding states since our connection with them? So now listen to this, because this starts to sound a lot like the grievance culture of MAGA. The controlling majority of the federal government, under various pretenses and disguises, has so administered the same as to exclude the citizens of the southern states, unless under odious and unconstitutional restrictions. So they're saying that preventing slavery is unconstitutional, right? So just keep that logic in mind. From all the immense territory owned in common by all the states on the Pacific Ocean, for the avowed purpose of acquiring sufficient power in the common government to use as a means of destroying the institutions of Texas and her sister slaveholding states. So they also say later that the federal government did nothing to protect them from the savages, the Indian savages on our border, and the murderous forays of banditti from the neighboring territory of Mexico. So it sounds kind of like build the wall, right? So at the end it says, when we avert to the course of individual non-slaveholding states and that of a majority of their citizens, our grievances assume a far greater magnitude. All right, so this wasn't written on Twitter. This was written in 1861, February of 1861. All right, so let's talk about the practical elements of Texas seceding, right? So I've made this map of Texas. That's freehand, believe it or not. Okay, so on the map, I've outlined all the major cities in green, right? So we've got Amarillo, Dallas, El Paso, Houston, Austin and San Antonio, right? So in cities like Amarillo and Dallas-Fort Worth, there are major defense firms that make platforms like the Joint Strike Fighter. That's a $1.2 trillion program. So what happens if they secede? Does the program of record shift to another American company instead of a Texas company? Are those corporations willing to forego the likes of $1.2 trillion of revenue to provide those platforms in accordance with the defense budget? Airports. So if I'm landing at Houston International or DFW, do I need to show my passport now? Because it's a foreign country, it's a different entity. What happens to those hubs? If it becomes so inconvenient for airlines to do stopovers there, will they just go to other American cities? And what about sports teams? All right, so if Dallas wants to play a team out of state, is that legal now? It's not the NFL anymore. So does it just turn out to be Texas Football League where Dallas plays Houston? Or the NBA where Dallas and San Antonio and Houston do like a round robin series? What's that all about, right? And then I-10, which runs right here in red. So that's an interstate that's funded by federal dollars. So potholes, the lines on it, guardrails, that's all federal dollars. So what would that look like if it was run by the state? And what does the United States do if they don't want to go through these new checkpoints at the border of Texas at Beaumont and El Paso? That'd be a big pain in the ass. So they probably just reroute I-10 to go around the state, which isn't really that much longer because it's not straight. It goes way down through San Antonio, right? So just as a practical matter, this talk of cessation is reckless and ridiculous. So the other thing that happened with that declaration of causes in Congress in February of 1861 is once that was made, on the spot, those lawmakers were expelled. And you know what happened at that point? Their federal paychecks were stopped. So it's time for the other members, the other Republican members of Congress, to do something consequential to these seditious lawmakers. It's not funny. So either censure or full up expelling. Because you know what happened 5 months after the declaration of the state of Texas in February of 1861? The Battle of Bull Run, which opened the darkest chapter in American history. All right, that'll do it for this episode. If you like my show, please click like, subscribe, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.